Okay, so this is the recording of class for Thursday, September 16th. I've already announced that I'm not going to be in class tomorrow, so I just wanted to let you know that I will leave assignments for you, a couple of video lectures, and a little bit of SAT practice. So the second thing I wanted to announce is that on Tuesday, so after the next time I'll see you guys will be on Tuesday, I wanted to let you know that that's the day I'm getting evaluated by Miss Christan. And she'll be in the room. And the reason that I tell you that is because a lot of times when an administrator's in the room, you think they're watching the students. And she's not watching the students. She's watching me. Every teacher gets evaluated. I'm sure you've seen this. Administrators in your classroom. It's usually to be watching the teacher, not the students. So you guys don't have to do anything different. You just have to be your fantastic, amazing, wonderful selves. Okay. So that will be on Tuesday, just to let you know. Okay. So at around 11:30, we are going to leave the room for a few minutes, and we're going to go down to the book room, and we're going to pick up our books, and you're going to be getting 2 volumes of it today. And it's going to be a lot. I mean, the books are pretty thick, but we're not reading all of it. But those are the books that we have to use according to our memorandum of understanding with staff. We are, for the time being, going to skip the command of evidence part of this. And we're going to go straight into the background. So these first set of slides, I'm going to skip these because this is one of the things that's going to be on your video lecture. It's about 10 minutes. I recorded it for class today. It talks about how English went from being kind of a garbage language, like people thought, ew, English, ew, gross, nobody wants to talk in English, to being a really dominant language in the course of the 16th century. And so there's a little bit of a lecture around that happening. And there's going to be a little trivia game next week. And in the trivia game, you're going to gain an advantage in the class activity. So you're going to want to do well on that. So pay attention during the video lecture. So I'm going to skip that in the interest of time. If we have time at the end, I'll go through and do all this stuff. Then you won't have to watch the video lecture tomorrow. But I have it just in case. So we're going to go right to the sonnet, which is what you guys read for today. So go ahead and take out your readings on Sir Thomas Wyatt. It was just a single page one. That's all you need to have out. Plus, if you didn't get a chance to grab them, we have 3 handouts. And 2 of these are going to go, well, they could all go in your notebook, actually, if you wanted them to. But these are all for your notebook. All right, so if you didn't grab any on the way in, you can come up and get it, or you can raise your hand and I'll bring it to you. Yeah, which one? This one? Yeah, okay. All right. What's that? What was the one you're asking to I gave you at the end of class on Tuesday. It was Sir Thomas Wyatt. It looks like it's copied from a book. So I'll give you a few minutes to get your materials together. And then, you know what? Well, let's get our notebooks ready first. So, Miss Rodriguez is amazing, and she's generously offered to let us use her scissors and glue sticks. What I would like you to do is I would like you to put this half sheet, paste this into your notebook. Okay? If you don't have your notebook today, you can do it a different day. But we're going to be using these in class. The half sheet says 7 steps to analyzing a sonnet. And you'll notice this is one of the sonnets that I assigned for homework. But it has more lines between it because we're going to be looking at analyzing it. And what I want you to do is analyze a sonnet. And this is going to set you up for Tuesday's activity we'll be working through, just to give you a preview of what's to come. So I'll give you a few minutes to start putting that into your notebook in class, and then we'll get started on the lecture for today. So we'll take a few minutes to do that. And so you can come up. There's actually more scissors in here if we need them. There's a lot of scissors. And just make sure, like as I said, that you guys are putting everything back. Okay, we need to choose persons. We have a lot of people up today. Hang on a sec. No, she's here. Maybe you could go like around 9:30. We'll be an hour there. So we're taking a few minutes to put these into our notebooks. That looks like it right there. Okay. We have a staple. You want me to bring the stapler? Yeah, you can take it. I might be able to hook you up with the binder if you need it. The Avid coordinator has like a million in her room. Oh, all the handouts are right there. Is that one not working?
Oh, I didn't see it.
That's okay. Okay, we'll get started in just a few minutes. I have to wait for this to load up anyway. My computer's been very slow today, so if it's slow during class, I apologize. Okay. Take a couple more minutes, and then we'll go over the characteristics of a sonnet. I want you to put in the 7 steps. You can put the literary devices in if you want to, but the thing is it's kind of big, so I don't know if it'll fit. But if you're able to put that in there, so that would bug me if it was hanging off. So, but those are just some literary devices that we might be using as we analyze. So there's a lot of different ways that we could have covered the Renaissance. Here's the book, and you're going to get this today. There's a lot of ways we could have covered the Renaissance because check this out. This is a 16th century book. So I had a lot of choices to make when I sat down to do my syllabus, and there's a million things in here. So I chose the sonnets. Here's the reason why I chose the sonnets. I'll just go over this while you guys are still getting your notebooks ready. I chose the sonnets because they are really representative of that time period, and that's what SLO1 says we have to do. We have to find works that are representative of that time period. I can't be pulling out wackadoodle things that I found in some obscure place. They should be representative of the time period, and the sonnets are very representative of that time period. I could have done a Shakespeare play, and I really thought about it, and up until maybe a couple weeks before school, it was on the syllabus, and then I decided there were some other things I would rather do. If you're disappointed you're not reading a Shakespeare play, that could be one of the things you choose to do for your research project, which we'll start talking about next week. And the other reason is we have to cover those SLOs 3 and 4 we talked about on Tuesday. And these are really good to do that because they're so short that we can really focus on them. So we can spend 20, 25 minutes looking at one sonnet and really dissecting it. And we wouldn't really have that time if we were reading a long play. So for me, this is the best way to get to how an author uses language. So that's my rationale because I have to think about these things when I choose the works. When I have a book this thick, what do I choose? And so that's what guided my decision, just so that you understand that. We will be reading some poems that are not sonnets as well, just so you can see other forms, because we're not just looking at the one form, we're looking at other forms. Okay. So again, here's the SLO to demonstrate knowledge of the characteristic forms, the sonnet being that characteristic form, styles of expression, how they express themselves in the sonnet during the historical period, in this case, the Renaissance or the 16th century. The learning objective. And what I want to point out with these learning objectives, you're going to see these almost every single day until you take the midterm, because this is really hard to do. What I'm going to be asking you to do in the midterm is very difficult, but doable. Okay, I'd like to be honest about how challenging things are. Looking at how an author uses language to support his or her theme is one of the most challenging things you can do in literary analysis. So that's why you're going to see these over and over again. It's going to take us a while to get good at this. It took me a long time to get good at this. It took me a long time to even understand what that meant. So you'll benefit from my struggles, hopefully, but you will see these reoccurring. Language, how does the language support the theme? How does the author's use of language support the theme? You're going to see that again and again because it's so important and it's so hard. Okay. All right, so the goal for this part of today's lecture, I want to review the general characteristics of a sonnet. I'm going to mention the 3 different sonnets, but we're really going to focus on the first one, the Petrarchan sonnet, which is also called the Italian sonnet. So if that word Petrarchan looks like what, you can say Italian instead. It's the same thing. Okay. So these are the general characteristics of a sonnet. So if this is something you didn't know, this is going to be true of all 3 types of sonnets. They're all 14 lines. A sonnet is always 14 lines. They all have some kind of specific rhyme scheme. And another way of thinking about rhyme scheme is a specific rhyme pattern. And they're usually written in a specific meter. In the case of Renaissance sonnets, they're almost always written in blank verse, which is 10 syllables per line. So it's quite a thing to write a sonnet. It's really, really hard. Because especially if you're trying to do a type of sonnet, like the Italian sonnet, because you have to do it a certain way. You can't just like rhyme things when you feel like it. You have to rhyme in a pattern, and you only get 10 syllables per line. If you ever sit down to try to do that, it's very difficult. And you start to see, even if some of this stuff maybe isn't your jam, you start to see the genius behind it. The genius behind someone who is able to pull this off. Okay. All right, so this is also, and we're going to look at this on the poem. That's why I had you like paste that poem into your notebook, because we're going to look at that one specifically. So an Italian sonnet, or the Petrarchan sonnet, has two parts to it. It has 8 lines, and this is going to be the rhyme scheme of those 8 lines. It's always A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A. And if you don't remember what a rhyme scheme is, it's really so much easier for me to show you on the poem, which I will in just a second. The second part of the poem is known as the Sept, which is 6 lines. And if you know anything about octopuses have 8 legs, octave 8 lines, right? Sestet, if you can speak any other language, sestet, cis is often 6, and that's where that comes from. It's varying patterns. It might be CDE, CDE, or CDC, CDC. So that just depends on the poet. This is the one part where it can be a little bit different. But the octave, if it's different, that's fine. It doesn't mean the poet's terrible. It just means they're not writing an Italian Petrarchan sonnet. They're writing something else, which is what other writers did. Shakespeare did something different, which we'll learn about tomorrow and next week. So the sestet could be this or this. All right, and this part is really important to know, because this helps with analysis. This helps me with analysis. So the purpose of the first 8 lines, the purpose of the octave, is to introduce a problem, express a desire, reflect on reality, or present a situation that causes doubt or conflict. So the octave presents a problem. Hello.
Philip, I'm so sorry. I need to go on this story.
Okay, well, so
We have horrible time.
yeah, I'm recording the class, so she can get it later. So the octave presents a problem. You can simplify it to say the octave presents a problem. This slideshow's on Alamo if you want to go back and look at this more complicated explanation. The sestet makes a comment on the problem. So once you know that, you know in the 8 lines, you, as a reader, as an analyzer, you got to figure out what the problem is, or what the issue is that the poet's addressing. And in the last 6 lines, you have to see what that comment is on that problem. So this is really important to know that this is how an Italian sonnet is written, because that helps you to figure it out. Because you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, I don't know what that means. I look at them, and the very first time I look at it, I don't know what it means either. Okay? Sometime I'll talk to you on, I maybe talked to you about this last year in class. I wasn't that great at, that was like my weak point as an English student, was poetry analysis. I was horrible at it, honestly. I was really bad at it. But I had to get good at it, because I was like, I couldn't not teach poetry as an English teacher just because I was bad at it. So I had to really work to be good at it. I was amazing at grammar. I'm good. I love reading plays. I'm really good at character analysis. I was not good at this. So I've had to really work at it. So if you feel like you're not good at it, if you feel like you are good at it, great. You're ahead of where I was when I was your age. If you feel like you're not so good at it, you don't always get poems, I hear you. That's where I was. So knowing little tricks like this helps me when I analyze a poem. Okay, that's in there twice for some reason. All right, I'm not going to get too into blank verse. I don't think it is a characteristic form of that time. It was this idea of 10 syllables per line, and it was written in iambic pentameter, and it has like a system of stressing, da 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 da. So it always stresses the second syllable. If you were a Shakespearean actor, maybe some of you will become a Shakespearean actor, who knows? You would probably need to know blank verse because it affects how you give the lines out. But for our purposes, I want to mention it but not dwell on it. Okay, so we're going to start with Sir Thomas Wyatt the Elder, and this was the reading assigned for today. So Sir Thomas the Wyatt was a courtier of Henry VIII, and when we watch the video lecture, you're going to get a little bit more information on this, but courtiers were sort of associates of Henry VIII, and they were in court with Henry VIII, and it was very tenuous because Henry VIII had historically had sort of a capricious temperament. What do I mean by that? I meant one day he loved you, the next day he hated you. One day you were in his favor, the next day he wanted to have you executed. Quite literally, he wanted to have people killed. And so Sir Thomas Wyatt the Elder, was one of his associates, one of his courtiers. He was alleged to have had an affair with Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was the wife of King Henry VIII. So he had a lot of he was sentenced to death a couple of times. He actually managed to somehow escape those death sentences, but he was a close associate of Anne Boleyn. Some suspect that there was a romance between the two before she married King Henry VIII. There's some thought of that, but really there's no evidence that he had the affair of Anne Boleyn. And if you're really interested in that aspect of it, there's a lot written about Anne Boleyn. He introduced the English sonnet to the English Renaissance, and that becomes a very important mode of expression. So this idea of the sonnet starts in Italy, which is why it's called the Italian sonnet. And the person who perfects its name is Petrarch. That's why it's called the Petrarchan sonnet. Again, Italian is probably easy to remember. But the Italian sonnet starts in Italy. By the time it makes its way over to England, it becomes extremely popular. People love it. They love reading it. And then it becomes a mode of expression that does change throughout the 16th century. Shakespeare, when he gets his hands on it, he changes it. And when Edmund Spenser gets his hands on it, he changes it as well. Just like the music we were listening to the other day, right? That might have started in one style and then changed a little bit to another style and changed a little bit to another style. So people might get a hold of something and say, I like it, but let me try this too. I like it, but what if I did it this way instead? So the way songs evolve over time, like we saw the other day, so did the sonnet. So we're starting with the basic sonnet, the Italian sonnet, and as we go through the next couple of classes, we'll go through the Shakespearean sonnet, we'll go through the Spenserian sonnet, and we'll see how they're the same and how they're different. Okay. One thing about the Italian sonnets was they were over the top love poems about the perfect woman, that just everything about her was perfect. The idealization of a woman. That was kind of what the Italians did. You'll see how Shakespeare deals with those kinds of ideas in his poem. So Wyatt continues in this tradition, this ideal woman, this perfect, this unattainable, wonderful woman. But he also, as you can imagine, idealizing women often leads to disillusionment when things don't work out the way you want them to. Okay? And that's something that turns to disillusionment. And I got that information from the reading. You might remember that if you did your background reading, that for Wyatt, he was writing these poems about this ideal woman, but then he was so disillusioned when it didn't work out. Okay. All right. So now, where the one that I gave you, I think I gave you who? No, I didn't give you who. Do you have? Do I have the right one up? Is that the right one? Where's the one that let me look here. No, I did the long love. Okay, well we'll label that one in a second.
Yeah, both.
Let me write you a pass. Okay. There you go. Okay. All right, so let's actually, I'm going to transfer over to looking at the other one. And I have it on Cami, which I absolutely hate Cami, but since I can't get the document, I think I know how to make the document camera work, but I don't have the right lens. Okay. Let me close some of these. Okay. See if I get that to work better. Okay. Let's see if it'll come up this time. I thought it might come up while I was waiting. Okay, here we go. Okay. So this is the poem that's in front of you, right? So when you mark up, so if you look at the steps that I have, research the poet and any applicable background to the sonnet. Well, we did that when we did the reading, right? And I just went over the applicable background to it. So I know a little bit about Sir Thomas the Wyatt. I know that he was alleged to possibly have had an affair with Anne Boleyn. I know that he wrote in the style of the Italian sonnet. So he built on that tradition of ideal women, sort of over the top poems. So I have that background. The second thing is to label the sonnet according to the type that it is. So we're going to label it as an Italian sonnet, as a Petrarchan sonnet. So we know that from our notes, what's my rhyme? First of all, I know that this over here, the first 8 lines, let me see if I can draw. Let me see, drawing. Let me see. Okay, so the first 8 lines are called the what? What do we call the first 8 lines of the poem? The octave, right? 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so this first part is the octave, right? So we're going to label that as the octave. Okay. And so my job as I go through is going to be to figure out, make this a little bit bigger. Okay. My job is to sort of figure out what is the problem, because the octave is going to present a problem to the reader. So the second part is what? What do we call that second part? The last 6 lines, what do we call it? The sestet. Okay. So, and that's going to provide a commentary on the problem. So I know that right away. So that's going to affect how I read it, because as I'm reading it, I'm trying to figure out what's the problem, like what's the gist of what he's talking about. And then I want to figure out the comment on the problem in the octave is going to be the theme of your poem. So it's important to figure those things out. The next thing is the rhyme scheme. So we know, based on our notes, we know it has to be A, B, B, A, B, B, A. And if you don't remember that, like somewhere you're like, I don't remember what the rhyme scheme is, you just figure out what rhymes. So harbor doesn't rhyme with, so harbor, the first line always gets an A. And I'm going to make this red so it stands out. So the first line always gets an A. If the second line doesn't rhyme with it, and it doesn't, it gets a B. Let me make it capital. You guys are going to be able to do this a lot faster than I am, because you're not using Cami, you're using your own writing, but you can go through. So it's A, B, B, A. Banner and harbor do rhyme. You might be like, it's not an exact rhyme. I mean, give them a break. They had to rhyme and write in 10 syllables. It's hard work. So we're going to let them have a little bit of a leeway on the rhyme. As long as it's close enough, we're going to call it a rhyme. So pretense and residence rhyme. And so the banner and harbor rhyme. So we're going to make that A. So like I said, you guys can do this a lot faster than I can. But then suffer, also, we give them credit for a rhyme there. So it does help to know the rhyme scheme. So if you don't see the exact rhyme there, you can give them, you can call it a rhyme. So that's your octave is always going to be A, B, B, A, B, B, A, and an Italian sonnet. The sestet could be a little bit different. So fleeth becomes different. So we gave that a C. So this one is C. Cry is different, so cry is going to get a D. Remember this one, that the poet gets to be a little bit more creative. So appeareth and feareth definitely rhyme. Die and cry rhyme, so I'm going to give that a D. And faithfully is going to be considered close enough to fleeth. Faithfully and fleeth are close enough, so we're going to give that a C. C, D, E, E, D. Or is that maybe it's supposed to be, ending faithfully, cry, die. CDE. Okay, I think that's right. Okay. All right, so that's our rhyme scheme. And that's the next thing you do. And that's usually takes like 2 seconds, unless you're using Cami like I am, and it takes a lot longer. So that is usually what happens when you when you label it. So that's step number 2. Step number 3 is going to take a little bit longer because step number 3 is going to be the literal meaning of the poem. So what I want to mention about steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is those don't have to be done in that order. And when you guys are doing your Shakespearean sonnet, you're going to be each given a different job within your group. But when it comes to labeling the poem, and we're gonna take a break to go get our books, and then we'll go through and annotate the poem when we come back. But that's going to be what we're doing today as a class is going to be what you do in your small group on Tuesday with your Shakespearean sonnet. And I have these big posters of the sonnets that you're going to be able to write on. So you'll be able to share them with the rest of the class. That's a preview of what's to come. All right, any questions so far? Okay, let me just make sure Mr. Suarez didn't text me because he was going to text me if he was running behind. Okay. Because he's helping Miss Garza Dan Weber too. So, okay. All right, so I think we can head down there. So I'll just close the door behind us. I don't think it's locked, so I'm going to leave everything here except my phone. But we're going to go ahead and get our books from Mr. Suarez right now. So go ahead and head down to the. Oh, I'm going to stop the recording. So I'm going to stop the first half of the class. I will put the second half of the class into a new video. Okay, so this ends the first half of the class. When we come back, we're going to be analyzing this poem.